يا ربي. Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهله وصحبه وسلم. You know what? I was supposed to open the book and figure out what exactly we was before I left the book. And unfortunately, because I'm not the professional, I didn't do that. But I have an idea where we were. Somewhere around here, if I'm correct. Okay. I believe it was somewhere around here where we were talking about al-qadir. Okay, because that's what got me into explaining uh, the intellectual possibility, necessity, and all of that. Right. So it's possible that we're going back and catching up because we kind of like I think I should have reviewed the video before the last video so I could figure that out, but I didn't. Anyway, so I'm just gonna go into this part. Okay, so on page 26, the author, may Allah have mercy on him, said, Al Khaliq, the creator, ArRaghib, the sustainer, Al Alim, the omniscient, Al Qadir, the omnipotent, the one who does whatever he wills. Whatever Allah willed to be shall be, and whatever Allah did not will to be shall not be. So, the explanation, the meaning of Al Khaliq, the creator, is the one who brought all the creations from inexistence into existence. Hence, no one creates with this meaning other than Allah. Thus, other than Allah became existent by Allah creating it. Creating is bringing from inexistence into existence, and there's no creator other than Allah. Somehow I don't remember reading that. Okay, so Allah said, قُلِ اللَّهُ خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ in Surah Ar-Ra. The verse means that Allah is the creator of everything. The term shay, meaning thing, mentioned in the verse is inclusive of both entities and deeds. Matter of fact, shay we usually translate it as yani, a thing. So anything that actually exists is a shay. Because it's permissible to use the term shay for Allah, and that came in the Quran. Hmm. So in Surah As-Safat, Allah Azza wa Jal said, Wallahu khalaqakum wa ma ta'amalun. The verse means Allah created you and what you do. Hence, the two verses are clear proof that Allah is the creator of entities and deeds. So this is something you got to be very clear about, because the people in the past that deviated from Ahl Sunnah, amongst those people are the Qadariyah. The Qadariyah, they believe that the creations create their deeds. And we say Allah creates us and our deeds. Okay? So Allah is the only creator. You acquire your deeds, you do not create your deeds. You still on mute? Or you able to correspond yet? I don't even know how long it's been.
Yeah, I'm back now. I'm still here.
Okay. So uh so we believe that Allah creates us and what we do. We do not create anything. We just acquire our deeds. Okay. Whereas the Qadariyah, whom the Prophet ﷺ warned about specifically, okay. So the Prophet foretold that this group would come, and he foretold that, and he also informed us, rather, he informed us that uh, every ummah has had this issue. Okay, there were people that arose up in every ummah that believed like the Qadariyah. When I say every ummah, like that would not include the ummahs before Nuh alayhi salam, because there was no blasphemous before before the ummah of Nuh. Okay, so all those other ummahs, they had people that would claim that other than Allah creates. Okay, and so the Prophet ﷺ likened the people like this in our ummah to the Majus. You know who the Majus are?
No, but sounds familiar.
The Majus, that's Arabic for, uh, in English, they call them Magi. If you were to, which, Yani, even most people in English don't know what Magi are, to be honest. But um, people that's like into history and religion, they would know that the Magi are the Zoroastrians. Okay, so for the Christians, they have in the story of Isa bin Maryam.
I think I've heard of them once. Don't people try to claim like they're the oldest religion?
Yeah, yep, yep. Uh, and in the what they call it, the birth of Isa alayhi salam, they said that sometimes they say three wise men, and sometimes they say three wise men from over east, or they say three magi. They say magi, okay, but like yani, when I was a Christian before I became Muslim, I remember reading about the Magi, and I asked, "What's the Magi?" And they said it was people from over east. I got no other explanation than that, and I didn't think to look it up at the time. Like I was a kid, so like they didn't have internet like that, so they had encyclopedias, but eventually I learned about them. But so this group, they believe in what they have. Their religion is what you call a dualist. So they believe that there's a creator of good and a creator of evil. Okay. So they don't actually, from what I know, actually worship the creator of evil, but just believing that there's a creator of evil. Okay. They likened Allah to the creations, or they gave Allah a similarity. Okay. So they said, like, this evil creator, as they claim, created all the darkness and all the evil, and like Allah created all the good. That's basically what they said. So the Prophet ﷺ, he likened whoever believes that other than a creator, other than Allah, is like these people. And from the variations, the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't just warn us about this group, he made takfir on this group. These are people that we judge as blasphemous. So for this reason, uh, Imam Malik rahimahullah, during his time, he was asked about if someone wanted to marry their daughter to a uh, Mu'tazila, because the Mu'tazila, they're from the Qadariyah. Okay, so uh, so they said, if a Mu'tazila seeks your daughter's hand in marriage, is it permissible? Because the Mu'tazila, they claim to be Muslim, but they are Qadariyah. They believe in more than one creator, right? They believe that we create our own deeds. And so Imam Malik rahimahullah, he recited the ayat of the Quran that means a believer is better for you than a blasphemer. Okay? So he was making it clear that this is not lawful. Okay? Because it's not lawful for the Muslim woman to marry other than a believer. Okay? So this is how he answered. And various, basically, so from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, also the companions and others, the scholars of Ahl Sunnah, they all judged the Qadariyah as blasphemous. However, in the later generations, you had people arise who they were like maybe strong in fiqh, but they weren't strong in aqidah. And so they misjudged cases. So this group, the Mu'tazila, they have more than one deviant thing going on about them, right? Deviant beliefs. But their deviant beliefs, not every one of their deviant beliefs reaches the level of blasphemy. So sometimes the people would speak about the Mu'tazila in general, and sometimes they'll speak about them like they are, like example, they may be speaking about a belief of the Mu'tazila that's not from blasphemy, and they call these people Mu'tazila because they believe this thing that the Mu'tazila believe. Okay? And then when they speak about them, they're saying that these people, so like an example of one of the beliefs that the Mu'tazila had that's not blasphemy is they do not believe that in the hereafter that the believers will see Allah. Okay? So in short, it's a strong saying amongst Ahl Sunnah is if a person did not believe that you will see Allah on the day of resurrection, this does not fall into blasphemy. There's some scholars that say you do fall into blasphemy for that. We'll talk about that at another time. Like, how did they come to that? But what's popular is that if someone had this belief, they didn't reach the level of blasphemy, right? So speaking about this case, someone would say if you prayed behind someone that had this belief, your prayer is valid. Okay? But they're not talking about someone that had a blasphemous belief that there's no disagreement about, such as believing that other than Allah creates. Okay? So the people, they had a misunderstanding. So some of these giants in fiqh wrote this, and then later on people take this, and these are from the later scholars. So then they're taking this from later scholars amongst the Hanafiya and the Shafi'iyya, and they're ignoring what Imam Abu Hanifa and his comrades and Ash-Shafi'i and his comrades actually said. So they're going to the lesser level scholars, and they're taking their judgment over the higher ranked scholars. And the lesser level scholars, they're saying is like nothing in comparison to the higher level scholars. Like the Mujtahid Mutlaq, how are you going to go against the Mujtahid Mutlaq? Okay? And so some people are falling into error over this. So be careful. You may run across books where say the Mu'tazila are not kuffar, and they mixed up the cases, so to say. You understand what I'm saying?
You said something to me?
Yeah. After I finished saying what I was saying, I said, "Did you understand what I'm saying?"
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have to watch the video for that because I'm not gonna explain all of that again. That was a lot of words.
No, I got the majority. I got the gist.
Okay, so anyway, you got to watch the video anyway. That's the whole point of me uploading the videos for you to watch it to really get it down. Okay, so we have it goes on. The meaning of ArRaghib the sustainer, is the one who makes livelihood reach his slaves. So Allah, this is another thing that the Mu'tazila differed with us about. Okay, we say the sustenance that reaches the slaves is from Allah as well. So the sustenance that reaches all of the creations, be it a human, be it a bird, be it a worm, be it a germ, okay, whatever is living and it gets sustenance, it acquires its sustenance by Allah providing that. And you have no sustenance other than what Allah provides you. However, us, the accountable beings, our sustenance that we are provided also falls into the categories of halal and haram. So, if you were to acquire haram sustenance and you ate from this, you are committing a sin. Even though Allah made it reach you, you had a choice whether to indulge in it or to leave it alone. Okay? So this is from Allah Azza wa Jal, whether it is halal or haram. And if you enjoy the halal and avoid the haram, then you get a reward, long as you are doing that with the right intention. Okay? Whereas the Mu'tazila, they were saying that Allah only provides the halal sustenance. And if that was the case, then as if they're saying that, like, so as if they're saying sustenance is only what's halal. So sustenance is what you need to sustain life. Okay? So when you have people that don't ever have any halal sustenance, right? Like maybe their whole job is haram and that's all they eat from. Okay? So if that's all they're eating from, how are they surviving? They're sustaining themselves. That's impossible because Allah Azza wa Jalla said what means that He provides the sustenance for the slaves. So they acquired that sustenance, but they didn't provide that sustenance to themselves. It wasn't created for them except by Allah. Allah is the creator of all sustenance. Okay, it goes on. The meaning of al-alim, the omniscient. You know what that word omniscient means? You back on pause again? Hello.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, I say, do you know what the word omniscient means?
What happened?
Do you know what the word omniscient means?
Omniscient? Does that mean like all knowing?
Yes. Okay. So the meaning of al-alim, the omniscient, is the one who is attributed with the eternal and everlasting attribute of knowledge that does not change, increase, decrease, or get renewed. Okay? So Allah's knowledge does not change, i.e., what He knows, He always knew. It doesn't increase. It doesn't learn something new. It doesn't decrease. He doesn't forget. It does, nor does He get renewed. He doesn't have to remember. He knows. Khalas. He is knowledgeable, not like other knowledgeable beings, because His knowledge is eternal. The knowledge of others is originated. So our knowledge is something that we acquire. It's originated. It's a creation. Whereas the knowledge of Allah is eternal. And the knowledge of Allah encompasses everything that is to be known. Okay? The meaning of Al-Qadir, the omnipotent, is the one attributed with the consummate power. MashaAllah. It says, the power of Allah is an eternal and everlasting attribute by which Allah produces an effect on the contingent beings, i.e., anything whose existence at one time and inexistence at another is intellectually possible. This is where I think we left off at. So it says, by his power, Allah makes things exist and he makes them cease to exist. Al-Qadir has the same meaning. However, the term Al-Qadir is ablag. Ablag is an intensifier. Let me see. They have a footnote. It means that Allah's power is comprehensive to all. Linguistically, in the Arabic language, the terms differ slightly, but when attributed to Allah, the meaning is the same. Okay, so Mr. Uwais?
Yes.
Yeah, so what we're saying here is the power of Allah is related to the intellectual possibilities. It's not related to the intellectual necessity or the intellectual impossibility. That's why we went over all of that about the intellectual judgments. It's because in this part we got to speaking about.
The chords are over. I just need to switch it to this. Change the map.
I don't know what you just said.
So I can ask you.
Okay. So the intellectual judgments. Reason why we got to speaking about the intellectual judgments because the power of Allah is related to the intellectual possibility. It's not related to the intellectual necessity or the intellectual impossibility. And the power of Allah either brings something from non-existence, or as they have in the book, inexistence, into existence, or from existence into inexistence. So that means its subject, okay, is that which accepts existence at one time and inexistence at another time, okay, which is only the intellectual possibility. This is what the power of Allah is related to. Likewise to that is the will of Allah. So, but unlike the power and the will is an attribute that we mentioned before. What attribute did we mention before that is not related to, that is not only related to the intellectual necessity and the intellectual possibility? You know?
Intellectual possibility. Intellectual impossibility.
Huh?
Intellectual impossibility.
What? You're not answering my question. I said we just recently mentioned an attribute that is not only related to the intellectual possibility or the intellectual necessity. So it's related to, so, okay, the power of Allah and the will of Allah is only related to the intellectual possibility. It's not related to the intellectual necessity or the intellectual impossibility. But there is an attribute we just not in this class mentioned that is related to all three. That's what I'm saying. It's related to the intellectual possibility, the intellectual necessity, and the intellectual impossibility.
Intellectual impossibility, is that not it?
No, that's not an attribute.
Oh, attribute. I don't know.
It's the knowledge.
Oh, the knowledge, yeah.
Okay, so the knowledge of Allah, Allah knows the intellectual necessity, Allah knows the intellectual impossibility, and Allah knows the intellectual possibility. Okay, so the knowledge of Allah is related to all of that. But the power of Allah and the will of Allah is only related to the intellectual possibility. Because the power of Allah and the will of Allah, okay, so the power of Allah brings the intellectual possibility into existence or takes it out of existence. Likewise, the will of Allah, it specifies the intellectual possibility with one attribute over another attribute, one possibility over another possibility. Okay, but they don't affect what doesn't come into existence, because the Intellectual necessity is always in existence, so it doesn't come into existence or exit existence. Okay? So, and the intellectual necessity does not have possible attributes, rather, it has confirmed attributes, it has necessary attributes, because that which has created attributes is itself a creation. Understand?
I forgot to read it. I'm sorry. I said okay.
Okay. Um, okay, so now we have the meaning of the one who does whatever he wills is that Allah has the power to bring into existence whatever he eternally willed to exist. Nothing can render Allah powerless to do so. He does whatever he wills without toil, and no one prevents him from doing it. He does not need an instrument nor movement. That which needs an instrument or movement is itself a creation. Okay. And it has in the footnote that God is not attributed with movement or rest. These are attributes of a creation. I say, nor the assistance from others. If he willed for something to happen, it will surely happen. Okay. So it says the meaning of whatever Allah willed to be shall be, and whatever Allah did not will to be shall not be, is that whatever Allah willed eternally to be existing shall be existing, and whatever Allah did not will eternally to be existing shall not be existing. The will of Allah does not change because the change of the will implies origination, and origination is impossible to be attributed to Allah. So, it's saying like origination. That's another way of saying occurrence. Mr. West.
Yes.
Okay, you remember how I said there are different terms that all mean creation?
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember some of them?
Probably not. Let me see. You go. You go. I definitely remember. Yeah.
Okay, so amongst them is a happening, an occurrence, an event.
Yeah.
Okay.
You asked me stuff that indicate creation.
Huh?
You asked me stuff that indicate creation, right?
I said like other words that means a creation. There's different words that all.
So something that would describe, something that would prove something is a creation.
Yes.
I understood that round. Let me see.
Or an expression that means something is created. That's what I'm basically saying.
You said movement or rest.
Yeah, those are creations, but that's not what I'm asking. Okay, so I'm like saying like there are different terms that, so like example, if you're speaking to outright atheist, right? If you use the term created or creation, they're gonna object immediately. Okay, but if you use the term occurrence, or you use the term event, or you use the term happening, or origination, because this in this book they use the term origination. So this is the new word I'm trying to give you, along with the words that I already gave you. Okay, is origination. Okay, because they used it in this way in the book. So if you use any of those terms while you're speaking to an atheist, they're generally not gonna object. Usually, they're gonna accept that there are things that existed at one that exist at one time that didn't exist at another time. But the minute you say creation, even though creation means that, now they want to object because they realize that a creation, when you say creation, they know that you're confirming divinity. But they're so foolish that they don't realize that these other terms mean creation also. So you're also confirming the existence of a divinity. So to avoid their uh stubbornness, okay, you would prefer to use these other terms to get to where you want to get to in the conversation, is what I'm trying to give you. Okay, so I'm giving you other words other than the term creation. So if you were speaking to a blasphemer, you're trying to guide him into Islam, you can use these terms and he won't necessarily object. You're going to basically uh, use his slowness against him, so to say. MashaAllah. So it says the will of Allah does not change because the change of the will implies origination. So that's like, if I wanted to say it in another way, I could have said the change of the will implies an event or implies an occurrence, a happening. All of that works. Okay. And it says an origination or an event or a happening, an occurrence is impossible to be attributed to Allah. Hence, Allah changes in the creation in accordance to his, I don't like that, in the creation. Allah changes the creation in accordance to his eternal will without his eternal will changing. So, let me see. What time is it? We could go another 10, 15 minutes. So, the author, may Allah have mercy on him, said, the one without whom no sin is avoided and no obedience is fulfilled, the one who is attributed with all proper attributes of perfection and is exalted above what is considered imperfection if attributed to him. Laysa kamithlihi shay'un wa huwa as-sami'ul basir. Surah Ashura, it means nothing resembles Allah in any way, and he is attributed with hearing and sight. So the explanation. Actually, before we get into that explanation, I want to go over that term. Because I was expecting it to mention it in the text and it didn't. So, Mr. Uwais.
Yes.
That statement that they translated, whatever Allah willed to be shall be, and whatever Allah did not will to be shall not be. That's from the Arabic, Masha'Allahu kan wa ma lam yasha' lam yakun. Okay? This is a statement that the Prophet ﷺ taught one of his daughters to say. So he told her to say this. So this is from the different adhkar. So he taught this dhikr to her, and it spread from her to the rest of the nation. Okay? And this is a beneficial dhikr to say. One, because it's giving you, what, if you know the meaning of you mentioning it, it's a humbling dhikr. Like, you know that whatever Allah will to be shall not be. I mean, whatever Allah will to be shall be. Astaghfirullah, I misspoke. Whatever Allah did not will to be shall not be. And it's like an alleviation, because nothing's going to happen unless Allah wills it to happen. So this is an alleviation on your heart, so you don't have to worry about things. Okay, so there's various benefits associated with just mentioning this zikr a lot. And so he taught his daughter this dhikr, and she taught the rest of the nation. It spread from her. It goes on. So now we're back on this part. It says the explanation from the text I read before I jump backwards. The meaning of la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, the one with whom no sin is avoided and no obedience is fulfilled, is that no one can evade sinning except with the protection of Allah, and no one has the ability to obey him except with the help of Allah, as was mentioned in the authentic hadith narrated by Al-Bazzar. So in this hadith that they're referring to, the Prophet spoke to one of his companions. I believe it was Ibn Mas'ud. I got a review. But he called this companion and he said, do you know the meaning of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah? And what did the companion say, you know?
No.
He said, Allah and his messenger know best. Now remember,
Yeah, I heard that.
huh?
I heard that.
Yeah. Now, you know, all of the companions, like the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, spoke fluent Arabic. So they're all speaking in Arabic when they said this statement. Okay, so we're giving a translation of what was said, but they all spoke in fluent Arabic. So if I was to translate this term literally, okay, which you may see this term translated literally by some people, okay, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. If we translate it literally, is there's no might or power except with Allah. That's the literal translation thereof. Okay. So this companion, he didn't. So that's as if I was to say to you, right? If I was to say to you, hey, always, there's no might or power except with Allah. You understand? You know what that means? You say, yeah. Okay. But the companion didn't say that. He said Allah and his messenger know best. Why he said Allah and his messenger knows best is because the companions knew that not everything is to be understood upon face value. Okay? So if the Prophet tells you a statement and linguistically you know the meaning, that doesn't mean you necessarily know the meaning in reality. Okay? There is secrets to this, and they recognize this. So this is why the companion said, Allah and his messenger know best. And then the Prophet explained what we just translated, what translates as the one with whom no sin is avoided and no obedience is fulfilled, i.e., or is that no one can evade sinning except with the protection of Allah, and no one has the ability to obey him except with the help of Allah. So the Prophet explained that this dhikr actually means that. Okay, so it's not just the simple literal meaning. Okay, so just from that, you understand the difference of reading a book and taking a book from a scholar. Because the scholar is going to give you more than what those words on that page is going to give. Or someone who learned the books. I'm not a scholar, but I learned the book. Right? And the Quran and so forth like this. This is why these deviant people who they claim we follow Quran and Sunnah. Okay? We don't follow no scholars. We only follow Quran and Sunnah. This is a slogan. It sounds catchy because, mashallah, the top thing to follow in the religion is the Quran and the Sunnah. But there's an implication in their statement. What's the implication in their statement? If I say, like example, if you meet someone and you say, well, I learned the Shafi'i school, so I follow the madhab of a Shafi'i. And then they tell you, oh, I don't follow a Shafi'i, I follow the Quran and the Sunnah. What's the implication of his statement?
That they assume that Shafi'i's wrong.
Basically, yep. It's as if he's saying a Shafi'i doesn't follow the Quran and the Sunnah. A Shafi'i followed the Quran and the Sunnah. Imam Ahmed followed Quran and the Sunnah. Abu Hanifa followed Quran and the Sunnah. And Imam Malik followed Quran and Sunnah. Al-Awza'i followed Quran and the Sunnah. All the different ulama followed the Quran and the Sunnah. So when they come with this statement, we follow the Quran and the Sunnah, we don't follow men. That's what they say. You know what I'm saying? As if they're trying to say those men didn't follow Quran and Sunnah. Okay? Whereas the implication of our statement, okay, is this is a recognized methodology of following Quran and the Sunnah that I'm taking by. Okay, I follow this academic, well-known route of following Quran and Sunnah. Okay, so in reality, what they're following is their whims, their ahl hahwa, because they're not following proper scholarship, because they're just picking up a book and reading from it and thinking they know something. And just as they're not like that companion who waited for the explanation from the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Okay, yeah, they would find this written in general, but apparently they don't all listen to it, because I'm telling you, you can find translations of it literally. Okay, so, and this is because people don't just stick to learning the details, and it's a lot of details to learn. Okay, like when you, these schools that's been developed and maintained, which, you know, we mentioned more than the four, but the four is the ones that's been maintained. Okay, that was weird. But the four is the one that's been maintained. Yeah, I see the phone hang up. Okay. Huh? Okay. So the four is the one that's been maintained. Okay. They are specialized in following the Quran and the Sunnah, and they were developed in the lifetime of their founders through like, it wasn't like they just came with something new, right? So mashallah, one of our friends, you remember, I won't mention name, but I remember one time he was like, you know, why do you follow a Shafi'i, since Shafi'i is newer than Abu Hanifa? Why didn't you follow Abu Hanifa, right? And I'm like, not everything that a Shafi'i didn't just make up his own madhab like that. It's from knowledge he acquired from other scholars from before him. So they collaborated with the knowledge that, like, they collected all the knowledge that they gathered, and then they were of the rank that they can sift through that knowledge and give us a clear path in following Quran and Sunnah. And then after them, huh? Oh, then after that, the school didn't just stop developing from there. It continued. Okay, it continued being refined through the centuries. So we have centuries of scholars in each one of these four madhabs. Okay, that uh, used a recognized methodology in following Quran and Sunnah and preserving it for us. This is what we follow. We don't just nilly-willy pick up a book and read and think we're scholars, mashallah. Okay, and this term, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, the Prophet taught us, it has a lot of benefits. Repeating this dhikr, okay, like repeating this dhikr is mentioned in one hadith that it is a cure for 99 different ailments. The least of them is, some people translate it as depression, and some people translate it as anxiety. Okay, and maybe it's sadness. So that leans more to depression. So if you find yourself depressed or anxious, repeat la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Okay, and like I said, it benefits you in other than those. So repeating it a lot is beneficial. And when we say repeating it a lot, what do we mean by a lot? Do you know?
Like multiple times.
What the people of knowledge mentioned is when someone say to say a dhikr a lot, the minimum amount is like 300 times. Okay, so that means like throughout the day, like if you have dhikr beads or just your fingers, you could just use your fingers to count, right? So like if you count, you could count the digits on your hand, like the different digits on your fingers. Like if you count your four fingers, that's 16. Okay, so then you say, if I did this If I just kept going over my four fingers, the different digits, 16 times 4, okay, et cetera, until you get to them. Like if you went over it 10 times, that's 160, right? Uh, so you get the idea of how to figure out if you're using your fingers, or if you got dhikr beads, that helps also. Okay, so uh, and it was mentioned that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said that he told the Prophet alayhi salam to tell. So they met each other in a miraculous way during al-Isra wal Miraj. Uh, so during this miraculous event, when they met each other, uh, Ibrahim alayhi salam told the Prophet to encourage his ummah to say this statement a lot, so that it will be like trees for them in paradise. So it's like there's going to be reward for saying, you're going to see physically the reward of saying this dhikr in paradise in the form of trees. And the trees of paradise are made of gold and silver. Their trunks are made of gold and silver. And it says, let's see. So it says, Allah is attributed with all proper perfection that befits him. This statement was restricted with the term that befits him, because perfection is either perfection when attributed to Allah and other than Allah, such as knowledge. Okay, so ilm, knowledge, when attributed to Allah, is perfection. But be careful here, because there's another term that we use for knowledge in Arabic that we don't attribute to Allah. I remember there was a person that used this term, and the only reason why, alhamdulillah, they accepted when I corrected them, but the only reason why I knew to be corrected was because I heard it from a teacher. So and that's the term arif, like essentially people would say anta araf billah, like you are a knower of Allah. Okay, like this means or and some people they call it gnosis, okay, which is like deep knowledge, whatever and so forth. But for whatever reason, it's not permissible to use the term araf for Allah. It's permissible to use alim, ilm, but it's not permissible to use the term araf. And I don't know the reason why, but there's something about it in the Arabic language. We don't know. So we stick to what's been conveyed in the religion in general. Okay? So it says, or let me go back. It says, because perfection is either perfection when attributed to Allah and other than Allah, such as knowledge, or not such as being attributed with being al-Jabbar. So al-Jabbar, this is one of the names of Allah. Okay? When attributed to Allah, it has various meanings of praise, which can be, amongst them is the one who has absolute control of things. Amongst them is the one who fixes things. Okay? And there are other meanings. This term al-Jabbar, this is one of the names of Allah. And this is a praise when attributed to Allah, but it's a dispraise when attributed to a human. What it means when attributed to a human is like an oppressor, a tyrant. So if you call someone Jabbar, like Anta Jabbar, you're saying this is a tyrant, this is a dictator, this is like this type of person, an oppressor. Okay? And this is bad. You don't want to be called this, right? So this is a statement that when attributed to Allah, it's praise, and when attributed to a human, it's dispraise, right? And it says, and also being attributed with having a sharp mind, for this is praise when attributed to a human, and it is not permissible to attribute to Allah. So there was a famous man, his name Sayyid Qutb. He attributed Allah with the mind. This is not permissible. Okay, we don't attribute Allah with the mind. Allah knows, but we don't attribute the mind. The mind is like a tool, that utilizes knowledge. Okay, our intellect is how we use knowledge. We utilize knowledge with our intellect. Okay, we don't attribute Allah Azza wa Jal with that. This is something that, just like our hand is how we grasp things, right? Mind is how we utilize the knowledge. It's like a calculator or something. Uh, it says, as Allah is attributed with all proper perfection that befits him, he is clear of all imperfection. What does not befit to be attributed to him, such as ignorance, weakness, color, having a boundary, being in a place or a direction. And I want to give you another tidbit, Mr. Uwais.
Yes.
Okay. So there is the term what's it? Jamal. So this is used for Allah. But when used for Allah, it has a different meaning than when used for us. Okay? Or Jamil. Okay, so and there's a hadith that uses this term. Jamil, it's like Jamil or Jamal. So if you translate it literally, it's as if you're saying, let me see. Yeah, that's it. Okay. They say Allahu Jamil Yuhibbul Jamal. So some people translate this literally. And what they understand from this is not permissible to attribute to Allah. So they understand from it, they say that Allah is beautiful and he loves beauty. This is not beautiful, is not an attribute of Allah. Okay, because Allah doesn't have a body. Okay, usually when you say something is beautiful, you're speaking about a body, correct? Right? Physical attributes. And this is not the meaning of this hadith when attributed to Allah. Rather, the Jamil, when attributed to Allah, means that Allah has attributes of perfection. And when it says that he loves al-Jamal, he loves excellence from his slaves. Okay, so what we're supposed to do is strive to have good attributes and to do the best that we can in worshiping Allah. Stuff like this. That's what the hadith is talking about. It's not saying that Allah has a physical beauty and he loves, things that are physically beautiful. MashaAllah, some believers, believe it or not, are ugly. Allah created good. Allah created beautiful and ugly. This is something too weird. MashaAllah, I've had it where people try to say you can't say something is ugly. They're talking out of their opinion. Nothing in the religion prohibited us from saying something was ugly. Matter of fact, there's a hadith about a companion who was extremely ugly. Okay, he was not beautiful. He was far from beautiful. And this companion, I can't remember his name right now, but this companion, radiallahu anhu, he was a very pious person, and he was, loved by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and the Prophet got him married to a woman. Like the Prophet sent him to this house, and the parents didn't want to marry their daughter to him because he was not attractive, right? He was like, I think he had some type of deformity. He was so unpleasant to the eyes. But the daughter, when she found out that the Prophet sent him, she said, no, I will not object to what the Prophet suggested for me. And she married him even though she was not attracted to him. And later on, he died in a battle. Okay. Uh, so where people come up with this idea that there's no such thing as beauty, like they say you can't call something ugly. That like as if you're committing a sin if you call something ugly. They made something you shouldn't call a believer ugly. You know what I'm saying? Like, did that work? Wait a second. I don't even know what's just happened. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you shouldn't call a believer ugly because you don't want to uh, hurt their feelings. You know. Uh, and even there was a man who married a woman. This was later on down the line. This is and she was not attractive, and he married her, and he never even let her know that she was not attractive to him. And he treated her as if she was beautiful, and they had a beautiful marriage. Okay. Now, if you're patient enough to do that, then it'll be something good. You're doing something great for them. But if you're not patient, don't put yourself in this situation. You know. Um. So, but at the end of the day, uh, that is something like I don't want to say of this, well, of the world, but it's something like materialistic. Like the true beauty is what's on the inside rather than on the outside. And I'm gonna, since I brought up the hadith, I'm gonna read this explanation about it. It says this hadith is authentic and narrated by Muslim, but some people misunderstand its meaning to the point of kufr. Allah forbid, and think that Allah has a form and that He is beautiful. These people have committed blasphemy even if they do not realize it because they liken Allah to His creation. Form is not permissible for God because it is an attribute of created beings. Imam Abu Ja'far at-Tahawi, Ahmad bin Salama al-Misri, said in his creed, whoever describes Allah with a human meaning has committed blasphemy. So whoever believes that Allah has a body or that He has a form or shape is a blasphemer. As for the hadith, Allah is Jamil, it does not mean that He is beautiful in form, but rather that He is beautiful in attributes, i.e., His attributes are perfect, or He is beneficent, i.e., merciful. Okay? He bestows favors upon His servants. The meaning of He loves beauty is that He loves a good state. He loves His servant to be in a good state, clean from vices, and characterized by attributes that a believer should have, such as piety and good character. It does not mean that He loves beautiful form because beautiful form is a characteristic of both believers and blasphemers, and Allah does not love blasphemers. Allah Almighty said, "For in what means for indeed Allah does not love the blasphemers." From here, we know that it is not permissible to say that Allah loves beautiful people because it contradicts the Holy Quran. So that's the short explanation of there, and mashallah. So now we are on page 29, and we're gonna stop here, inshallah. Any questions? Okay. Remember to review the lesson. Well, I guess inshallah we're gonna have a lesson tomorrow, and I might do it from the library. See, but still, throughout the week, try to review these different lessons. It's especially like you might not have a question now, but if you review the lessons, you might come up with a question when you realize it. You know what I'm saying? You might catch me on a mistake even. Maybe I said something wrong, and you bring my attention to it. So we're working together, inshallah, in that. All right, let's end the lesson. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهله وصحبه وسلم. رب اغفر لي للمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لي للمؤمنين والمؤمنات